One quiet morning, just before dawn, a soft ping broke the stillness in a person's bedroom. Half awake, they glanced at their phone, only to see a notification from their Ring camera. It was a motion alert. Thinking it was just a raccoon rummaging through the trash, they tapped to check the footage, expecting a brief glimpse of some small creature. But as the video played, what appeared on the screen was anything but ordinary. A faint, white figure could be seen just beyond the porch, moving swiftly back and forth in the early morning fog. It had a blurry, almost mist-like quality, barely holding the shape of a person. The figure seemed to be caught in a strange, endless loop, darting back and forth along the same path, fading in and out, as though it existed halfway between two worlds. As the figure repeated its movement, disappearing briefly before reappearing, an uneasy feeling grew. It felt as if it was stuck in some sort of trance, a lost soul trying to escape its prison, yet forever bound to this strange rhythm. This simple morning check quickly turned into a lingering sense of dread. Questions filled their mind. Who or what was that strange figure? And why did it keep moving like that, never breaking from its haunting path? Not long after, in another home, a woman was heading into her kitchen, planning to start her day as usual. As she walked past the dining table, she was stopped in her tracks by a loud, violent crash. Her glass dining table had shattered without warning, sending shards flying in all directions. She froze, her mind racing, trying to comprehend what had just happened. She scanned the room, searching for an explanation. Had something fallen? Maybe something heavy? But nothing was there. No objects around the table could have caused such destruction. It was as if an invisible force had smashed it with tremendous strength. Standing amidst the scattered glass, she felt an icy presence in the air, like a silent reminder of something powerful, something that didn't belong in her home. The room now felt heavy, as if a hidden force had left its mark, leaving her with an uneasy sense of being watched. Even after cleaning up, the room never felt quite the same. In a quiet neighborhood park, a man took his young child out to play, savoring the peaceful morning. He watched as his child climbed up one of the slides, laughing and enjoying the carefree moment. Just then, he noticed a football slowly rolling out from another slide nearby. At first, he thought his child had switched slides, maybe trying to surprise him. But when he looked closely, his child was still right there on the original slide, unaware of the ball's movement. The man's curiosity turned into confusion. There hadn't been anyone else at the park when they arrived, and the ball's movement felt almost intentional. Stepping closer, he noticed something strange. The ball had come from deep within the slide, and as he leaned in to check, he heard it. A faint, distant whisper echoed from within the slide, so soft it was barely audible, yet unmistakable. His heart raced as he listened, catching what sounded like quiet footsteps, tapping faintly from somewhere inside the metal structure. Startled, he stumbled back, realizing that something unseen was occupying the empty playground, and he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. The once joyful park now felt wrong, as though an invisible presence was lurking in the shadows, watching. In a remote part of town, Russian explorer Tim Maru, known for his fearless paranormal investigations, set up camp in a house that many locals dared not approach. Determined to capture evidence of the supernatural, he arrived prepared with every piece of equipment: EMF detectors, recording devices, and night vision cameras. The house was dark and abandoned, each corner filled with years of dust and secrets hidden in the shadows. As Tim moved through the rooms, the silence was overwhelming. His EMF detector began to flash sporadically, signaling movement just beyond his sight. Then, a sudden, sharp push from behind nearly knocked him off balance. He spun around, only to find the empty room staring back at him. Seconds later, the sound of footsteps echoed from the roof above, slow and deliberate, as if someone or something was pacing just over his head. Fear gripped him, yet he pressed on, documenting each moment. In the glow of his night vision, a faint white mist appeared in the corner, swirling briefly before vanishing again. As he caught his breath, his camera recorded what looked like a shadow moving along the wall behind him, silent yet relentless. The house seemed to breathe with life, as though it had become a living entity, waiting for its next move. In another home, a child was running around the TV lounge, laughing and darting through the room as children do. Suddenly, the door to the room creaked open, just a crack, but enough to catch the child's attention. As the child dashed past, they accidentally bumped into the door's edge, stumbling slightly from the unexpected collision. It was as if the door had shifted just in time for them to make contact. The timing was almost too perfect, as if an invisible hand had nudged the door on purpose. The child's innocent game came to a halt, and for a moment, the air felt charged with a strange energy. The laughter faded, leaving behind an eerie silence. The room, which had once felt safe, now carried a heavy atmosphere, as if a mischievous spirit had decided to join the game. On a quiet Saturday morning, a father decided to take his young child to the local park, eager to enjoy the crisp, fresh air and the simple joys of play. The park was deserted, as it often was early in the morning, giving them free rein over the playground. The child dashed toward the slide, laughing as they scrambled up the steps, their laughter echoing through the stillness. The father watched with a smile, savoring the innocence of the moment, until something caught his eye, a football slowly rolling out from the nearby slide. He blinked, puzzled. The ball seemed to emerge from nowhere, as if propelled by some unseen force. His child was still on the original slide, completely engrossed, unaware of the strange movement. The father's brow furrowed as he took a few steps closer, his curiosity piqued. There hadn't been anyone else around, not even a stray dog that might have nudged the ball. Yet here it was, moving with a deliberate slowness, as though it were being gently pushed by an invisible hand. He scanned the area, half expecting to see someone step out from behind the trees, perhaps playing a prank. But there was no one, just the quiet, empty playground and the soft rustle of leaves. Stepping closer to the slide, he crouched down, his gaze fixed on the spot where the ball had emerged. He leaned in, listening, his heart pounding in his chest. At first, there was only silence. But then, faintly, he heard it a whisper, barely audible, like a soft murmur carried by the wind. The sound was distant, yet unmistakable, echoing from somewhere deep within the slide's metal structure. The whisper seemed to rise and fall, like a gentle breath. And then he heard something even more unsettling. Footsteps, soft and deliberate, as if someone were pacing within the slide itself. His rational mind struggled to make sense of it, searching for a logical explanation. But the eerie sound persisted, growing louder, filling the hollow slide with an unnatural echo. His child, still oblivious, called out to him, snapping him out of his trance. He glanced at them, forcing a smile, trying to mask his unease. But as he looked back at the slide, a chill ran down his spine. The park, once a place of laughter and light, now felt different. The air was thick with an unseen presence, a feeling of being watched, as if the playground itself harbored a dark secret. He quickly gathered his child, urging them toward the exit, casting one last look at the slide. The ball lay motionless now, but the whispers seemed to linger, haunting the quiet morning. As they left the park, he couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was still watching, waiting in the shadows. ready to make its presence known. From that day on, he avoided that park, unwilling to return to the place where innocence had been overshadowed by something unexplainable, something that felt all too real. In the heart of an abandoned hotel with a reputation for harboring restless spirits, a team of seasoned paranormal investigators was working through the early morning hours. The air was thick with dust and silence, broken only by the occasional squeak of an old floorboard or the distant creak of metal. Each step they took stirred up the lingering echoes of past lives that seemed to hang in the air like a veil. They were drawn to the far corner of an expansive room where their motion-activated ball had inexplicably begun to flicker, a sign of unseen movement that left them both intrigued and unnerved. The room itself was shadowed and heavy with a sense of watchful presence. The dim light from their flashlights cast long shadows across the walls, illuminating the decaying grandeur of a place that had once been alive with people, laughter, and noise. Yet now, it held only a brooding silence, as though waiting for something to break the stillness. The team huddled around the ball, their faces tense as they watched the faint glow pulse in response to something they couldn't see. They exchanged hushed whispers, debating the possibilities. Some assumed it might be faulty wiring, while others insisted it was a sign of spirit activity. But all the while, they were blissfully unaware of what was happening just beyond their sight. From behind a faded, thick curtain that stretched to the ceiling, a face slowly emerged. Its features were ghastly pale, almost ghostly, with a twisted expression that seemed to hover between curiosity and malice. The face was partially obscured by the shadows, but what could be seen was deeply unsettling sunken eyes, framed by dark, hollow sockets, locked onto the group with an intense, almost predatory focus. Its gaze was unblinking, its movements eerily still, as if frozen in time, yet somehow teeming with a dark, silent energy. The eyes of the face held a strange glint, one that felt ancient and otherworldly. They seemed to burn with a quiet intensity, absorbing every detail of the scene with a chilling patience. It was a gaze that conveyed a strange mixture of fascination and contempt, as though the figure was not only watching but judging, dissecting each movement the team made. The investigators remained blissfully ignorant of the eyes that followed them, so intent were they on the flickering ball. At one point, the face tilted ever so slightly, as if straining to get a better view. The lips twisted upwards into a faint smile, a gesture so cold and unsettling that it seemed to pull the warmth from the room. This wasn't a smile of welcome or joy, but one of possession, as if this figure took a dark pleasure in their ignorance. The face lingered there, silently mocking the team, watching them fumble around in the dark, unaware of the malevolent presence that stood so close. In that fleeting moment, one of the team members thought they felt a sudden chill, a sensation like a thin finger tracing down the back of their neck. They shuddered, glancing around the room, their eyes darting toward the curtain. But nothing seemed out of place, and the others hadn't noticed anything unusual. They shrugged it off, blaming it on the draftiness of the old building. As the team returned their attention to the ball, the face slowly receded into the darkness, melting back behind the curtain as if it had never been there at all. It vanished without a sound, leaving behind an empty silence that felt almost mocking. The curtain settled back into place, and the room returned to its oppressive stillness, as if erasing any trace of what had just transpired. Later, when they reviewed their footage, a faint shadow could be seen hovering behind the curtain, barely discernible but present in a way that was unmistakably human. A chill ran through each of them as they realized just how close they had been to something truly sinister. That brief, mocking smile was burned into their memories, a silent, haunting reminder of the presence they'd never seen, but that had watched them with a terrifying intimacy. It began as just another evening at home. The person, let's call them Alex, had always been fascinated by Google Maps, often using it to explore far-off places and hidden corners of the world. That evening, in the comfort of their cozy living room, they found themselves captivated by a particular forest, one that rumors described as being off-limits and riddled with strange sightings. With each click, Alex zoomed closer and closer, drawn deeper into the winding paths of the remote forest. Trees appeared thicker and denser with each level of zoom, casting long, interlocking shadows that seemed to invite curiosity while warning against intrusion. As they moved through the digital landscape, Alex spotted an odd clearing ahead. At first, it looked like any ordinary gap in the trees. But as they adjusted the angle, something peculiar came into view: a worn, moss-covered well, standing alone in the center of the clearing. This well looked ancient, its bricks cracked and leaning slightly, covered in dark green moss. No other structures or signs of civilization were in sight, making the well seem like the last surviving remnant of something forgotten, something hidden from the world. Alex's heart raced slightly, a thrill creeping up at the sight of this mysterious well in the middle of nowhere. Curiosity got the better of them, and they zoomed in further, hoping for a closer view of this lonely structure. But as they did, something strange caught their eye. Near the edge of the clearing, close to the shadows cast by an old oak tree, there was something. At first glance, it looked like a trick of the light, a patch of mist, or a camera glitch. But as Alex adjusted the angle and zoomed in further, the figure became clearer. It was pale, almost gray, standing out starkly against the darker greens and browns of the forest. The shape was faint but undeniably human-like, with a form that seemed to blend and flicker into the shadows around it. The figure had no clear features, no visible face, no distinct clothing, but it was standing, or rather hovering, in a posture that looked disturbingly alert. Its head seemed to tilt ever so slightly, facing in Alex's direction as though it had been waiting. For just a moment, Alex could almost swear the figure was staring directly at them, seeing them through the screen. A chill ran down their spine, making them pull back instinctively. But fascination quickly overtook fear. Heart pounding, Alex zoomed in as far as Google Maps would allow, trying to make out any distinguishing details. The figure remained eerily blurred, refusing to come fully into focus. It was as if the image itself was fighting against clarity. The figure caught halfway between reality and a foggy dream. And yet, there was an unmistakable solidity to it, a presence that defied logic. Even in its haze, it felt aware. The figure was positioned close to the well, partially obscured by the heavy shadow cast by the tree, as though emerging from the well itself, as if it had just crawled out from that dark, unseen depth. The longer Alex stared, the more unsettling it became. Their imagination began to run wild images of the figure climbing, hand over hand, up the sides of the well, slowly emerging into the clearing, its gaze never straying from the spot where Alex now watched from miles away. Each second of staring seemed to pull them in deeper, like they were tethered to the figure, bound by an invisible line stretching across the digital divide. It felt wrong, almost intrusive, yet Alex couldn't look away. The more they focused on the figure, the more they felt a strange energy, a silent, heavy presence radiating from the screen. It was almost as if the figure knew it was being watched. But how could that be possible? In a mixture of horror and fascination, Alex decided to save the image. They took a quick screenshot, hoping to analyze it further. But when they glanced at the saved file on their desktop, the figure was gone. In the place where it had stood, there was nothing but shadows and trees, the clearing barren except for the well. Heart pounding, Alex returned to the Google Maps tab, reloading the page. But even there, the figure was nowhere to be seen. It was as if it had vanished entirely, leaving only the haunting memory of its unsettling form burned into their mind. The quiet of the room pressed in as Alex sat back, eyes fixed on the spot where the figure had once been. Was it a glitch? Some strange anomaly in the imagery? Or had they stumbled upon something far stranger? Something that defied explanation? Each time they blinked, they could still see the faint outline of that shape, frozen in time, its gaze fixed on them as if it had wanted to be found. For days afterward, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time they returned to that spot on Google Maps, it was empty, the figure refusing to reappear. And yet, in the dark corners of their mind, the memory of that pale, ghostly shape lingered, haunting their thoughts like an image branded into their memory.